This is the story that has me fired up first tonight. Republicans are desperately trying to steal the spotlight from President Obama over the termination of Osama bin Laden. Conservatives are actually scrambling to put national security back on the political table. So they're lining up to credit Bush's torture policies for the information that led to the death of bin Laden.
We didn't find this guy until 2007. We got it through enhanced interrogations or interrogating. Then they found the real identity. Then they found the guy, which led to this. So without strong interrogations, we wouldn't be here.
Yesterday was a testament to the military's dedication and relentlessly hunting down an enemy through many years of war. And we thank our president, we thank President Bush for having made the right calls to set up this victory.
The tools that President Bush put into place, Gitmo, rendition, enhanced interrogation, the vast effort to collect and collate this information, put it in a usable form, obviously served his successor quite well.
I don't know, folks. Anybody playing the violin? Do you see a pattern here? Oh, it's not going to stop. New York Congressman Peter King took that garbage to another level on O'Reilly's show.
You mentioned the fact that we obtained information several years ago, vital information about the courier for Obama. We obtained that information through waterboarding. And so for those who say that waterboarding doesn't work, to say that it should be stopped and never used again, we got vital information which directly led us to bin Laden. Wow. So key information we got on a very, very vital part.
That is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. You're not going to hear that on the other networks, I guarantee you.
Absolutely fascinating. Let's talk about some illegal activities tonight. What do you think, huh? Republicans want the media to argue about the merits of waterboarding instead of covering one of America's greatest military achievements since World War II. Forget that noise. It's time to get some facts on the Big Eddie chart tonight. First of all, let's look at this. Waterboarding, it is illegal. The Geneva Convention says it's illegal. The Attorney General of the United States says it's illegal. The President of the United States says it's illegal, and he happens to be a constitutional lawyer. Waterboarding, fact number one, is illegal. So I guess across the street they are promoting illegal activity. What about the moral high ground that we were talking about during the campaign, about how America was going to grab the moral high ground again, and we were going to show our enemies that we do not torture? President Obama doesn't use enhanced interrogation. That is also a fact. And Press Secretary Jay Carney confirmed that and says that we will not use torture. He said it today.
Can you say if there's been any change in President Obama's opposition to so-called enhanced interrogation techniques?
No change whatsoever.
No change whatsoever. That's a fact. Here's another one for you, folks. Increased drone strikes. You mean to tell me that guy named Barack Obama, who on the campaign trail said that he was going to be going after the terrorists, is ordering more drone strikes in his first year than President Bush did in his entire 2 terms? Wow, that's a heck of a stat, isn't it? And, of course, President Obama kept his promise. President Obama made this promise at the second presidential debate in October of 2008 before the election.
What I've said is we're going to encourage democracy in Pakistan, expand our non-military aid to Pakistan so that they have more of a stake in working with us, but insisting that they go after these militants. And if we have Osama bin Laden in our sights and the Pakistani government is unable or unwilling to take them out, then I think that we have to act, and we will take them out. We will kill bin Laden. We will crush al-Qaeda. That has to be our biggest national security priority.
All right, folks, that's the money soundbite right there. If they are unable or unwilling, we will do the job. We will take out the terrorist, whether it be Osama bin Laden or anybody else for that matter. I mean, have you ever heard a candidate talk like that and then act on active intelligence as President Obama did? Just another fact, fact number 5, Osama bin Laden is dead. Now, let's just get the record straight here, folks. This is all about 2012. The Republicans are out there creating this narrative because what we're seeing now is a Democratic president starting to get the upper hand on national security. He was out on the campaign trail. He said, this is the plan that we're going to use to take down the terrorists. He's increased the drone strikes. He's gotten #1 dude in Osama bin Laden. And things are rolling really good for America right now. Now, we all know that in the campaigns, the Republicans, you know what they love to do? They love to make you think that they're a lot tougher and a lot stronger and have a greater resolve, and they're far more patriotic than the Democrats. Not this time, boys. Ain't going to work. You see, we have the facts on our side this time. And here's another fact that's absolutely driving these Republicans absolutely crazy. The number is Pew Research Center, Washington Post poll. The baby, it is 56% of Americans approve of President Obama's job approval right now. Only 38% disapprove. That's a 9-point swing from last month in the president's highest approval rating since June of 2009. Now, the moral high ground, it's so important. Americans are not having to believe a campaign speech. They are seeing a strategy being played out big time. So what are the Republicans doing? Well, they're out there in full force. We played the tape for you. The sound machine's out and about because they want you to think that it's all about illegal activity. It's all about interrogations. It is not. And this country is not only taking down more terrorists under the Obama administration, this country is gaining the moral high ground. And we are not flippantly going to put out a death picture. We are not going to flippantly throw somebody into the ocean. No, it's been done with respect and with the traditions of the religion. And does President Obama get any credit for that? No. We've got Senator Graham down in South Carolina. He's questioning the way this whole thing came down. Folks, when it comes to national security, this killing of Osama bin Laden is the Republicans' Waterloo on national security. They don't have the upper hand. Their plan didn't work for all those years. They did the illegal activity, and it didn't work. And it was President Obama and it was the Democrats who have supported this strategy that was well played out on the campaign trail and now is enacted big time. And we're getting results. And we're not doing it through enhanced interrogations. And we are just as safe tonight as we have ever been. Joining us now is Matthew Alexander, a former military interrogator who tracked down senior al-Qaeda leaders in Iraq. He's the author of the book, Kill or Capture. I want to play this soundbite first because Leon Panetta told NBC News nightly anchor Brian Williams some information did come from enhanced interrogation. Here it is.
I think some of the detainees clearly were, they used these enhanced interrogation techniques against some of these detainees. But I'm also saying that, the debate about whether we would have gotten the same information through other approaches, I think is always going to be an open question.
So, finer point, one final time, enhanced interrogation techniques, which has always been kind of a handy euphemism in these post-9/11 years, that includes waterboarding.
That's correct.
Now, there's integrity for you. The president's administration is not going to lie to the American people about techniques that were used. But is it the moral high ground? And are conservatives right about waterboarding? Matthew Alexander, that's your first question tonight. Thank you for joining us. Are the conservatives correct about waterboarding?
No, they're not correct. What a lot of people are forgetting and leaving out of this conversation is what professional interrogators have been saying all along, which is that when you use coercive techniques, which includes waterboarding and enhanced interrogation techniques, you get the bare minimum amount of information out of a detainee. And that bare minimum amount of information is going to lack the details that you need to execute a mission to take out a target. The type of information you need to take out a target isn't a pseudonym or a nickname of a courier. It's who is that courier, how do we find him, and how do we know when he's meeting with our target, in this case, bin Laden. Take this example of what took us 7 years to go from the waterboarding of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in this name to bin Laden, and compare that to how we found Zarqawi. We convinced somebody to cooperate without using torture, someone very similar to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed who was dedicated to al-Qaeda. And when he did cooperate, he provided not only the name of the person that met with Zarqawi, but exactly how we would know when he would go to meet with him, and allowed us to go from cooperation, from capture of that person, cooperation, to the death of Zarqawi in about 6 weeks.
Mr. Alexander, tell us about this breaking report in the New York Times on Hassan Gul. What do you know about it?
Well, we don't know much about Hassan Gul and his interrogations. And reports outside of the New York Times conflict with the New York Times report, actually. Some people are saying the information came out in 2007. I always take all this information that comes out directly after these types of events with a grain of salt, because usually about half of what we hear is incorrect. And I think it'll take some time to flesh out the full story. What is clear is that the information came from several sources. It was pieced together by analysts, and that the real heroes in this are intelligence collectors, interrogators, and human intelligence
But of course the conservatives are out there saying that KSM served up the key name, and now the New York Times is reporting that is not the case. It came from the courier who was identified as Hassan Gul. So there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of cross-information that's going on out there. Who do we believe?
Well, Ed, if waterboarding that happened 7 to 8 years ago just now led us to bin Laden, and that's our measure of success, we're in a lot of trouble.
Well,
that's not an effective technique. Compare that to, my team when we were in Iraq, I went out on raids. Our time requirement when we did interrogations in the field was 10 to 15 minutes to get some info. Back at a prison, our standard was maybe 2 to 3 days to get some info to act on. Maybe a couple weeks or a few weeks in some other cases, but 8 or 9 years to get information and consider that valuable, it's not.
How do you counter this soundbite? This is Congressman Peter King. He says that waterboarding is a moral imperative. Here it is.
I'm in a small minority. I believe waterboarding is a moral imperative. Waterboarding saves lives. And I use the example of on September 10th, 2001, we had captured Mohammed Atta. And we knew that he was going to kill thousands of Americans. We didn't know when or where. Are we saying now that you wouldn't hold his head underwater to save 3,000 lives?
Does that argument hold up?
It doesn't for me, and it goes directly against my oath of office. My oath of office was to defend the Constitution of the United States like everybody else in the service. There's nothing in there about saving lives. When did America go from being a country that stands for principles like liberty, freedom, and justice to being a country that stands for security above all else? Numerous leaders, going back to the Revolutionary War, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, World War II leaders, presidents, and generals, all said that we could not use torture because it violates American principles, regardless of if it would or would not keep us safe.
But Mr. Alexander, and let me ask you to be very clear here, what Congressman Peter King said there, is that fact or is it his opinion that waterboarding saves lives?
Well, it's neither fact nor his opinion. It's fiction. To say that waterboarding saved lives also excludes any inclusion of the long-term negative effects of using torture and abuse. As I saw in Iraq firsthand, the #1 reason foreign fighters gave for coming there to fight was because of our torture and abuse of Muslim prisoners and detainees, which had led them there. And those foreign fighters made up the majority of suicide bombers. They killed hundreds, if not thousands of American soldiers. So you cannot in any way say that waterboarding has kept America safe.
So you saw firsthand the reaction to the waterboarding and the torture. It motivated the opposition to the point where it made the fight that much tougher and the task that much harder.
And Ed, that's not an opinion. The Department of Defense tracked those statistics. I saw them. That's a fact that that waterboarding and torture was al-Qaeda's #1 recruiting tool.
So moving forward, are you confident that we are going to be able to take out al-Qaeda and use the moral high ground, as President Obama has said his administration is going to do? And I think it's really profoundly pointed out tonight in the interview with Brian Williams and Leon Panetta is that they're not lying about it. I mean, they're saying that waterboarding was used and some information came from it. But moving forward, they're not going to do it. But the American people want to know, what's the best thing to do?
Right. And no interrogator who knows what they're talking about is going to say that torture never works. I'm not going to say that. What I'm going to say is define works. Consider all the long-term negative consequences of using it. How does that help us in the long term in trying to defeat al-Qaeda? It doesn't. It helps them to recruit new members. And you can't say that it works. What you can say is it violates the principles that this country was founded upon. Our country is now safer than it ever has been because we have started to regain that moral high ground that you talked about.
Matthew Alexander, great to have you with us tonight. I appreciate your time.